In the last section, we talked about the conservation of energy. Law of conservation of energy says that if something gains energy, something else must lose energy. Energy is not created or destroyed. So we can use that concept for something called calorimetry. That just basically says if we can measure something indirectly. If we want to know the heat lost, we just measure the heat gained, and vice versa. Now, calories we're familiar with from food, of course. So here's kind of an idea of calorimetry. We have some energy in the spaghetti, so the bonds have a certain amount of energy. So if you take that energy from 5 pounds of spaghetti, you can brew a pot of coffee. Or if you eat a piece of cheesecake, there's enough energy in there to light a light bulb for 1.5 hours. So we can take energy from one thing and use it for something else. So this is a basic calorimeter. Now let's say I want to measure a reaction. Well, a lot of times I cannot measure it directly. But if I put two chemicals into the water, what I can do is I can measure the temperature change in the water. So whatever energy the chemicals put out will be equal to the energy absorbed by the water. And so we can do our QMC delta T, which we'll do in a little bit. And here's a more lab-grade calorimeter. And you see in here, we've put our cookie. There's a chamber in here filled with oxygen. So a spark lights that cookie. It burns because it's in the pure oxygen. That energy goes out through the metal, which conducts, of course, very well, and into the water. So by measuring the temperature change in the water, we can calculate the energy lost by the cookie because it will be exactly the same as the energy absorbed by the water. So anytime we're doing calorimetry, you always measure the water. You don't care about anything else because the water is going to absorb all of the energy. So remember, this is our equation from the last section where we have the heat from a system is equal to our change in enthalpy, and that's heat content of a system. So those two things, we use them interchangeably. So the energy gained by a system is equal to the energy lost by the surroundings, which again is equal to mass times specific heat times change in temperature. So this summarizes calorimetry, what we learned from the previous section. So let's look at this problem. We have two solutions. So right now I have 25 milliliters of water and it contains some hydrochloric acid. That many moles. Now we don't need this, not important, that's in our solution. It's at 25 degrees and we're going to add that to another 25 milliliters of water containing some sodium hydroxide, a base. And again, we don't need that. And a reaction happens, and they want to know the enthalpy change during the reaction if it goes up to 32 degrees Celsius. Alright, so just like our previous problems, since we have a temperature change, we're going to use our equation where this is our heat, or enthalpy, and M is mass, and C is specific heat, and delta T is our change of temperature. So we are looking for the enthalpy change, which is Q. So we're solving for Q. Our mass, well, for water, now 25 milliliters is volume, but for water, 1 milliliter equals 1 gram. So this is 25 grams. So I take my 25 grams and I mix it with 25 grams. So of course my grams is 50. So my mass in grams is 50 grams. So that's M. Now C, my specific heat, for water, it's not given in my problem, but if I look it up on my table in that section, I will get my value of 4.18. That's from the table in the book. Now my change in temperature, well, both of them start off at the same temperature. They both start off at 25 degrees. We mix them together. In the end, they get to 32. So our change in temperature for the whole system is 7 degrees. And then we can multiply that out, and that's Q, that's our heat. Alright, on page 513 we see a similar type problem. Our number 12, it says we have two solutions, we're going to mix them together. So again, we're going to use QMCT. And for number 12, we are taking 50 milliliters and mixing it with another 50 milliliters. So that's 100 milliliters. And again, for water, milliliters equals grams. So there's our mass. So we'll plug that in for mass. Specific heat, again, that is from our table in our book. And their change in temperature for this problem, we are going from 22.5 degrees to 26 degrees. And so our change in temperature is 3.5 degrees. And if we multiply that out, we get our answer. Okay, number 13, we're throwing a small pebble in our calorimeter, and we wanted to know how much energy it releases. So again, we don't care about the pebble, we're going to measure just the water. So this is another temperature change problem. Again, I have 25 milliliters of water, and milliliters for water equals grams, so that's my mass. My specific heat, again, it's the specific heat of water, which I look up on the table in that section, and it's 4.18. And my change of temperature, I'm going from 25 degrees to 26.4. So if I find the difference of those, and when I multiply that out, that's my answer. Now, going back to chemical equations, which we've seen in previous chapters, we can put the enthalpy change, or the heat change, inside the equation. And we can do it as a reactant or a product. So here I see a substance that is definitely exothermic. It is putting off heat. If it's produced, and in this case heat is produced, well, then it makes sense to put the energy, or the heat, on the product side. And remember, from our equation days, these are the products to the right side of the equation. These are our reactants. So in an equation, if it's over here, it's exothermic. And if it's over here, that means, of course, it is endothermic. And they will always be positive, because in a chemical reaction, we only use pluses. We never use minuses. So inside the equation, always plus. Now, a different way of doing it, a different convention, is sometimes we take it outside of the equation. So again, here's our delta H, our enthalpy change, our heat. Notice it's not part of the equation. So when it's not part of the equation, I go by the sign. And a negative means it's leaving. That's exothermic. And a positive means it's entering. It's endothermic. So different convention. Outside of the equation, we look to the sign. Inside the equation, we see which side it's on. Here's a graphical representation of an exothermic reaction. So I have these two chemicals. They're at a high energy. When they react, they release that energy. So now if they've released some energy, they're going to be at a lower state than what they used to be at. So this is an exothermic reaction. It is releasing heat. An endothermic reaction we can graphically show the other way. So I have a low energy, it's going to absorb energy, and so now the products have more energy than they started with. So this occurs less often than the exothermic reactions do. Now when it's in an equation, we can do some math with this. So remember, when we have an equation like this, these are ratios, or we can definitely create ratios. So what this says, remember, for each coefficient, these are moles. And if there's no number in front, it's always 1. And so from this ratio, or from this equation, we can make several ratios. We can make any ratio. So what this is saying is if I have 2 moles of this stuff, and again I use the 2 because that's the coefficient in front, for every 2 moles of this that reacts, it's going to absorb 129 kilojoules. And I could do that ratio with any of these two things. I could say, okay, well, if I have 129 kilojoules here, well, then I have 1 mole of this stuff. Okay, that's the ratio that these things react in, and I could put any of these things for my fraction. Alright, so let's look at this problem. It says, I want to decompose 2.24 moles of NaHCO3. So we're going to start, of course, by writing the given. And our next step, after we write the given, since we don't want the given, we put it down here so it will cancel. And we never transfer the numbers, just put the units. Well, I can make a ratio of joules to moles, so that's what I'll do. So I'm looking for how many kilojoules, so I'll put that on top. And for my numbers, I go to my equation. So my equation says 129 kilojoules. I look for NaHCO3. I take the number in front, and that goes there. So now I can cross off my like units. I'm left with kilojoules. The question says find kilojoules. And so I can multiply and divide that out and get an answer. Alright, so a problem here, I'm given my equation. And it says, okay, what happens when I have 3.4 moles of Fe2O3, iron oxide? Well, my first step is to write the given. And since I don't want that given stuff, I'm going to convert it. And on top, let's see, I'm looking for kilojoules. So this is my ratio. I want to figure out that ratio. Well, my equation does that. So here's my Fe2O3. There's no number in front, so that means it's 1. So if I have 1 mole of Fe2O3, I get 26.3 kilojoules. I see my like units here, so I'm going to cross those off. I'm left with units of kilojoules. The question asks how many kilojoules, so I'm done. I multiply that, and that's my answer. Okay, number 14, a little bit different, because now I'm starting off with grams. And I have grams of carbon disulfide. So remember, when this is the case, well, I don't want grams of carbon disulfide, so I put it down there. Well, with grams is not in my equation, so I got to do something. I got to change it to moles. And hopefully you remember this. We've done this a ton. I look to my periodic table. My periodic table tells me the mass of 1 mole. And then I look up carbon. Carbon in the periodic table is 12. I'm going to look up sulfur. And I always round to tenths. And there's S2, so there's 2 of them. and I add these together. So that goes up here. Cross off my like units. I'm in units of moles, so I got to figure out if I'm done. Well, the question is not asking how many moles, it is asking how many kilojoules there are. So I got to keep going. So I don't want these units, but I do want kilojoules. So I match them up, I put what I want on the top, and so now I go to my equation that's in the book, and it says 1 mole of CS2 produces or absorbs 89.3 kilojoules. Those numbers come from the equation that's in the problem. I cross off my like units. I'm in kilojoules, so I am done. Alright, and lastly, one more thing is the heat of combustion. And that name tells you what's involved. The heat, the energy that is given off by burning 1 mole of a substance. And those numbers will vary for different things. So we see we have hydrogen, which doesn't give off a lot of energy per mole, all the way down to sucrose, which of course is a big molecule and produces a lot of energy. So 5,000 kilojoules per mole.